what the city is talking about.
The news that impacts you.
Welcome to the Montreal Now Podcast.
We talked yesterday about a story. Actually, you'd think this is good news on the surface, but of course, if you do a little bit of digging, maybe we shouldn't get too excited. It's about the state of car thefts in this country and in Quebec specifically. So, Bryan Gast, who's a VP of Investigative Services at the Équité Association, on this story. And Mr. Gast, I'll get to you a sec. I just want to give our listeners the basic rough idea. When I said it's good news on the surface, yes, new information, new statistics show that car theft in Canada is down overall, and pretty significantly, and in Quebec even more so. Can you basically, if you can, qualify when I say those numbers on the surface look good? Are there other problems, though, because it appears there are?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Nationally, auto theft was down 18%. In Quebec, it was 25%. And as you said, on the surface, that looks fantastic, and it's a good indicator that a lot of the enforcement actions have taken place. But organized crime is still alive and well, and to the tune of $900 million worth of stolen vehicles, and that's the piece of money that they're after. So they're using the vehicle as a commodity, and they're funding their criminal operations through these theft of vehicles. So it's still a serious problem.
So I think when people hear that, well, theft is down, I remember the big issue here a couple of years ago, right? We talked about the Port of Montreal being one of the major exit points for cars as they leave this country. We know police stepped up operations there, and obviously it's paid off in Quebec. But then there's the issue, and I'd not really thought of this, but it's one of the issues being looked at here, car fraud. So this is not someone grabbing your car off the street in the middle of the night and, chopping it up and sending it out or whatever. How does car fraud work exactly?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, Montreal Police and CBSA and OPPD and Équité, they've done a good job at the ports, but you're right. Criminals do pivot. And finance fraud, I mean, it's nothing new, but we are seeing an increase in it. They're purchasing vehicles either through synthetic ID or through bust-out schemes. They're acquiring that vehicle and then still containerizing it and sending it overseas. And we're seeing an uptick definitely in the vehicle recoveries that we're seeing at the ports.
Can you walk us through how that would work? So you walk in this case, someone, a criminal walks into a car dealership. How does that conversation go and how does it end up?
Yeah, I mean, I always try not to give a how-to guide at steal vehicles, but it's essentially synthetic ID, so meaning false documents, fraudulent documents, false ID,
right?
Possibly in somebody else's real name. So you might have be a case of identity theft. They're using your social insurance number. They're acquiring identification that on the surface looks good. They can go through the business office. It checks all of the things that they would need to check. Gets approved. The vehicle gets released. Then later they find out that it was a fraudulent transaction. Unless it's a bust out, which is an actual purchase, and then they stop making payments down the road, and it potentially could be false ID as well. So it's definitely an old thing, but definitely it's something we're seeing more of in recent months and years.
And are we seeing more of that, do you think, because we're doing a better job of getting, cars or keeping cars that are being stolen just right off the street? We're doing a better job of that?
Yeah, I would say Quebec and Ontario have done a phenomenal job on the enforcement side. And the vehicle itself is still relatively easy to steal. So, I mean, car theft is still happening in the traditional manner in which they're using technology to bypass the vulnerabilities of the vehicle. But yes, and not all vehicles are being exported. Criminals are also pivoting to, again, what's old is new again, chop shops and revinning, chopping the vehicle into multiple parts and selling it piece by piece, and either keeping the parts domestically for sale or shipping them overseas as well.
So let me ask a question here, and again, because I'm trying to understand how this works, right? Let's say if someone goes into a dealership, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, of course, if you're the dealer, you're in the business of selling cars. Is there some suggestion here that they should be a bit more stringent? Are they a bit too lax when it comes to this because they want to move cars?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables to it. It's the problem is the documents are so good. And there's a bit of an education piece here, and that's why we are working with the financial institutions. We are talking to the dealers, making sure that everybody is aware of the problem, and they are. So it's something that definitely, if it's something that somebody's considering, this is an area that we are highly active on and pursuing, and we've been very successful in dismantling some of these groups that are engaged in this activity.
I wonder, too, it's a matter that, imagine you walk in to buy this car and you're trying to do this fraudulently, right? I'm imagining many of these deals are closed on the spot, and I wonder, is there no mechanism in place where you can thank that person before you know that they're, trying to basically steal your car, and say, well, we need a 48-hour window to clear all this information before they go ahead and get the car. That doesn't exist in the system?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare to get it the same day, and I think that cooling off period is good. So you have the ability to do some due diligence and make sure that the transaction is as it appears. These are all things that are being considered, and especially since this is coming to light as a significant problem, there'll be more attention than there ever has been on this area, which is great. So I think programs like yourself and journalists like yourself that are making awareness that if you try it, you will get caught. So.
What about if we go back to, cars that were, the traditional method, if you will, of stealing them off the street, and we see the numbers have gone down, obviously. Is there any advice here for motorists with respect to how you can do a better job of preventing your car from getting stolen? Because I imagine now with digital keys and everything else, it's probably become easier, not harder.
Yeah, I mean, with every convenience comes vulnerabilities, and you're right. I mean, really any vehicle that's susceptible is a keyless entry, key fob equipped vehicle. So if you can park in a garage, park in a garage. We call it a layered approach. You don't have to do it all, but if you can do some of it, park in a garage, use a steering wheel lock, use an aftermarket immobilizer, use an aftermarket tracking device, use an onboard diagnostic port lock, use a pedal lock. Again, that's a long list of multiple options. You don't have to do them all, but if you could do a couple of them, it makes your vehicle less of a target because the individual needs the right tools or knowledge to be able to defeat whatever level of security you've placed on that vehicle.
I will point out one other thing for people who say, well, it's just stolen cars. This is not a victimless crime at the end of the day. We all end up paying for this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's one of the main concerning parts. $900 million. This is not a victimless crime. It's not just a property crime. This is organized crime that is using the stolen vehicle as a commodity. They're profiting from it. They're selling it. They're using it. And they're funding their other criminal operations, whether it be drugs or firearms. And those items are staying in the communities that we live. So it is a significant public interest. Public safety issue, and that's why the government and law enforcement treat this so seriously.
What are you asking the government to do more, if anything, to try to deal with this?
So the federal action plan came out and going through that process. A lot of those things have come into place. I mean, that's funding, it's CBSA prioritization on export, resources to be able to identify vehicles being exported, sharing of information, collaboration, cooperation with law enforcement. All of those things are occurring and occurring quite well. Some things that are still gaps is the current standard for security standards for vehicles. New vehicles manufactured or sold in Canada. The standard is dated back to 2007, has not been modernized or updated since. So there's an open consultation right now with Transport Canada looking to find ways to make that vehicle harder to steal in the first place. Because a lot of the actions that we're talking about today are reactionary. So if we can be proactive and make that vehicle harder to steal in the first place, that would be better for everyone.
We'll leave it at that. Mr. Gast, I want to thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Bringing you the breaking news and the people making it. Montreal Now with Aaron Rand, CJAD 800.
You may have already seen the book. There are a variety of interviews that our next guest has done, but I thought, we need to talk about this. So let's do it. Dr. Ezekiel J. Emanuel is a bioethicist, a health policy expert, oncologist, and a vice-provost at the University of Pennsylvania. And he has written a book with, I think, arguably perhaps the best title of any book so far in 2026. It is called Eat your ice cream. 6 simple rules for a long and healthy life. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel is on the line. Dr. Emanuel, thanks so much for being with us today. First question I need to ask is, whose idea was it to call the book that? Yours or the publisher's?
Neither. How about
wow.
that? So I have a whole section about Eat Your Ice Cream, but actually one of my agents, book agents, came up with the title when my original title was one that the publisher did not like. And once everyone saw it, it was like, the big light going off. Yes, this is genius. This is the right one. As a matter of fact, my brother, who is, as you may know, a very big Hollywood producer and really knows something about appealing to people, wanted to give her some big award for coming up with this title because he thought it was one of the best he'd ever heard.
I would always be remiss if I didn't ask you what your idea for the title would have been.
Don't be a schmuck.
Also a good title, by the way, for a book. But
yeah, but here's the difference. One is negative, don't be.
Yeah.
And the other is really positive, and it goes to the heart of the book, which is, look, you're going to pursue wellness, but you got to make it work for your life. You got to retain the joy in life, and ice cream is sort of, for me, the embodiment of joy in life.
So, I mean, that's clearly the overall message here, right? It's something that makes you happy, and obviously, as you're pointing out in the book, being happy is, in fact, important to longevity.
Yes. And one of the things is, as I say, look, you're going to exercise, you're going to eat healthy food, you're going to sleep, you're going to make friends and keep friends. You're going to do that for decades if it's going to improve your health, improve your wellness, and improve the length of your life. So you can't force yourself to do those things, by self-denial. That's why most people fail on diets, because it's about self-denial. So you have to figure out how to make these things joyful for you, how to actually really like doing the exercise, like eating healthy, and it's possible. And there are added pleasures which may not be on a wellness diet. I love, for example, my mom's cheesecake. I make my mom's cheesecake every few months because it's so wonderful, right? It's not on a wellness diet, but having it once every few months isn't going to, make me be unhealthy or die younger. It's doing that kind of stuff every day that's the problem.
So part of this is, as you're describing, is the everything in moderation is not a bad way to go.
That's a very good principle to live by, yes.
Let me go to something else, because, again, we're starting to hear more and more people talking about this now. One of the things you also mentioned is being more social, because being alone, the older you get, actually turns out to be physically bad for you as well.
Yes, it's bad on every dimension. It's bad for your health, it's bad for your longevity, and it's bad for your happiness. And, we're social animals. We've known this for 3,000 years, as long as there's recorded human history. Man works best by working with other people, living with other people, enjoying life with other people. That's why we have a big forebrain. That's what that forebrain is, navigating social relationships. And we, unfortunately, have become increasingly socially isolated and lonely, and that's been associated statistically with shorter lifespans. So there are lots of studies. Here's one from the United States, 20,000 people age 50 and above that they followed and measured the number of friendships they had, how often they spent time with people, the quality of those friendships. And it turned out people who had more friendships, richer quality, had a 25% less chance of dying in the subsequent 8 years, right? And there's over 3 million people who have been studied for that kind of association, all showing the same thing. And that's true in China, it's true in Sweden, it's true in Australia, true in the United States, and true in Canada. And one of the ironies, and this you probably appreciate, is, people who are introverts, about 25 to 30% of the population is introverted. Even when they actually live happier, live longer, and live healthier if they actually interact. It turns out if they force themselves to act extroverted, make friends, talk to people, they actually are better off and happier. That is an unexpected finding. So even if we have some introverts listening, getting those friends, having those friends, really, really important.
Yeah, there's that line, too, that you mentioned about even dining alone, which you don't think about, right? You go home from work, if you don't have any social connections, you end up eating alone. And if you do that over and over and over again, that, I guess, works against you. So the idea is just, go have dinner with somebody else. It doesn't even matter who, just somebody from work, anybody at all is better than eating alone.
100%. I'll tell you a little story. I have a research assistant of mine. He moved into a new apartment. Right across his apartment was a brand new restaurant. And he goes there and he's sitting and eating at the bar counter. And he's like, I'm not living the book I just worked with Dr. Emanuel on.
Wow.
So he asked the bartender right across. He says, this is a new place. Where did you work before? Not a very complicated, highfalutin question. And she started talking, and she mentioned that she's, trying to get a master's in health administration simultaneously. And he says, well, I work in health policy. And they began to talk about American healthcare and what each is learning about it and things like that. And then some guy down the bar said, oh, I remember you, to my research assistant. You were in my film class in college, and you were really into films and had some great comments to make. And he sat there for 45 minutes talking to two people he'd never met. And he left the restaurant feeling great. That's the kind of social interaction we have to encourage. And, say she shut him down. She just said nothing. Would he have lost anything? Absolutely not. Instead, he gained a lot by just having a conversation.
That's a terrific example. I'm not going to have enough time, but I want to get to a couple of things that you also mentioned, because this is something that's talked about a lot. Retirement, right? There are people thinking, okay, I've worked hard all my life, be it at 55, 65, whatever the age. What do you have to say about that?
Well, unfortunately, you maybe did work hard, and it's probably actually ironically been good for you, because work keeps your brain young and active. And, I don't know your vision of hell, but my vision of hell is all the rest of my body is really working well. My heart's working well, my kidneys, my lungs, everything. But my brain is not. I've got dementia or some other brain problem. That's hell. And the way to keep your brain engaged and active is to have challenges, have hobbies, do social interaction. All of those things occur at work. And when you stop working, one of the things that happens is the social connections and social network fall away. The challenges fall away. You might think, I'm relaxing, but in fact, your brain is also deteriorating. And so doing more, staying more engaged through work, really, really important. You can retire, but if you retire, you have to plan well. How are you going to replace that social interaction? How are you going to replace the mental challenges? What are the hobbies? Maybe you'll volunteer at a school or volunteer at a library or a food pantry or, an animal shelter. Those are the kinds of things you have to introduce into your life. So you just can't go to, a beach and drink pina coladas. That's not a very good way of retiring. That won't be good for your brain.
Or play golf all day.
Yeah. You said it, I didn't.
Okay. Last thing before we run out of time, I want to get back to what we started with. On the Don't Be a Schmuck section, what do you want to point out in there?
You shouldn't take unreasonable risks. Look, life is full of risks. It's not zero. The most risky thing most of us do on a daily basis is start the car engine. So that's my level. All right, that's a sort of reasonable risk. We take it every day. We're willing to live with it. Things that are much more risky than that, we shouldn't do unless they have huge benefits to us. And there are lots of things people do that are risky that don't have huge benefits to them. Smoking is obviously one of them. Vaping is another one. Not taking your vaccines is another one. Not taking your cancer screening test is yet another one. And I looked around, and the absolute most risky thing you could do is climb Mount Everest, because the chances of dying while climbing Mount Everest, 1 in 100, all comers, including the expert mountaineers, the Sherpas, everyone. And if you're over 59, the chance of dying are 1 in 25. That is by definition a schmucky move. Nothing could be that rewarding that you do that, for some bragging rights. It's very risky and just doesn't seem worth the risk. You're not getting a big benefit.
Kind of like the guy who climbed the 101-story tower in Taiwan last week.
Well,
and he's only in his 20s, I think. So there you go.
Yes.
I
there
will
are
just
people where this is their life, but that's different. That's not most of us.
Yeah. One last thing. You mentioned all the other things, smoking, vaping. I know alcohol, because we're finding out now that, no amount of alcohol is good for you. Where do you come in on that?
I think most people are whipsawed by what we're reporting on alcohol. 1 year it's wine is great, red wine, drink that. The fact of the matter is, from a physical standpoint, alcohol adversely affects your liver. It's associated with 7 types of cancer. It affects your brain. It increases your dementia risk. It also disrupts your sleep. So from a physical standpoint, not that good. But we have to recognize it also lubricates social interactions, which are very good. And so there's going to be a trade-off here, and it's important to understand. So there are you got to drink, if you're going to drink alcohol. I happen to be a teetotaler, but if you're going to drink alcohol, you have to do it in the right way. No binge drinking. You don't sit there and drink 5, 6, 7 drinks in one sitting. You should not drink alone. It should actually be social. And the last one is probably the right level, if you're going to drink, is like 3 or 4 drinks per week. That's the right level. There's some data that can be good.
All right, we will leave it.
So that's where I come down.
Dr. Emanuel, I want to thank you so much for your time. Absolutely, really appreciate it today. And best of luck with the book, although I don't think you're going to need it.
Thank you very much. My best to all the Canadians out there.
Take good care. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
The very latest news, reported and discussed. Welcome back to Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
So you've heard the word shrinkflation, right? It kind of came into prominence post the COVID pandemic, when I guess, manufacturers decided everything was starting to cost more. They had to find a way to deal with that. And instead, because apparently we consumers react far more strongly to changes in price than we do to changes in quantity, right? Which is really interesting when you consider, right? First thing, we look at the price. Otherwise, if the package looks the same, we can't really tell if it's a lot bigger or a lot smaller. Just like, oh, the price is still good. Well, retailers have figured that out because we're suckers when it comes to that as consumers. Our next guest is going to talk about that and why we maybe don't pick up on that cue. Preet Banerjee is a PhD, founder of YourMoneyDegree.com, a financial literacy program, and he is on the line. Preet, thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron.
Let me start with that part about, right, we react far more strongly to changes in price than to changes in quantity, and obviously manufacturers know that.
Yeah, they figured this out a long time ago. And so if you want to increase your unit price as a retailer, you can either increase the price for the same size packaging, or you can hold the pricing steady and decrease the size of the packaging. And it turns out that depending on which of these two mechanisms you use, people respond differently. And it's about a 2-to-1 ratio in how much we reduce our buying behavior, which means that if you increase the price by 1% versus decreasing the size by 1%, we will buy less when the price increases compared to when the size decreases. But over time, what happens is, let's say you buy something once per month and it lasts you 4 weeks. Well, if you have shrinkflation going on, you don't notice that you're buying less until you realize, you know what, I have to restock this item after 3 weeks, not after 4 weeks. So what's interesting is that the overall sales of these products actually goes up over time because people are buying more of this stuff because of shrinkflation.
How are we not noticing this? You know, consumers are so sharp these days, right? We know what everything is per gram, per ounce, whatever. How'd they pull this one over on us?
Well, I think it's because, this strategy is found more often in the staples that we buy on autopilot. So, everyone has a few items that is always going to be going into their grocery cart every time they go to the grocery store. And this is where we see it most effective because, again, people are kind of shopping for these items on autopilot. So they don't tend to notice it until people start talking about it. There's always someone who sort of does a little bit of digging and then, posts on a Facebook group, said, hey, have you noticed that such and such product has decreased in size? And for me, I can tell you my own personal story with shrinkflation, which is when I first noticed it. And this was with the Cadbury cream egg. So I was addicted to these things as a kid. And one year, because they're only released seasonally towards Easter, one year I was like, hey, these kind of feel a little bit smaller. And I went online and found out there was an entire furor of people who had noticed the exact same thing. It had gone from 39 grams to 34 grams. The price was the same. And that's when I sort of, realized for the first time the power of shrinkflation, because I also, I didn't stop buying those Cadbury cream eggs. I kept on eating them. So I noticed it, but I kept on buying it.
By the way, I'm curious, so when you do notice this as a consumer, right, and people I'm sure did at some point, or maybe you still do, but just not to a greater degree, is there ever pushback? I mean, do the manufacturers kind of say, oh, you caught us, so we're going to make sure we don't keep doing this, or does it really matter at all?
I think there might be some isolated incidents where that did happen, where maybe they made a change back to original sizing, but it's so rare that this strategy is now relatively commonplace for retailers and manufacturers. So they know that over the long haul this works. And while there might be some people who on principle or out of spite will switch to a competitor, overall, in the aggregate, people end up buying more of this product over time. So the strategy works, and I think one of the reasons it works is because maybe we don't notice until it's too late or it's not enough of a sting. So what's going to be happening is something that already exists in Quebec but not elsewhere in Canada, mandatory standardized unit pricing showing up on the labels at grocery stores. So Quebec is the only province where it is regulated and standardized so that when you are shopping, you see the big item price, but on the label, in usually a pretty small font, it'll give you the unit price. Elsewhere in Canada, it's voluntary for retailers to put this on their pricing labels, and sometimes they don't use the same unit, which makes it hard to make a comparison. So, for example, you might see orange juice from one company, and it's priced, the unit price is, X number of dollars per liter, and then a competitor is priced X number of dollars per 250 milliliters. And that extra step of mental math makes it impossible for people to compare in the moment.
Yeah, which is people giving up, and there we are, we're stuck with what we had. By the way, you mentioned, I wasn't aware of this, where would this be in other situations beyond just food?
Well, anything at the grocery store, take a look at the unit pricing, and you'll be able to more quickly detect if something is maybe subject to shrinkflation, because it's going to be a little bit more in your face, a little bit more salient. But shrinkflation overall is a strategy that you can see outside grocery stores because psychologically this works. So, as soon as one industry has figured out, hey, if we want to increase our margins, maybe we don't increase the price. We do it a little bit more stealthily by reducing the package size slightly. Then, other industries are going to copycat that. So you'll probably see it anywhere that you start looking for it.
I want to know where that. I mean, what other areas would it be in if not food? I'm not going to go to a clothing store and discover that the cotton T-shirt I'm buying actually contains less cotton than I thought I was getting last time. How does it work?
Well, you can think of, things from other stores that you buy from as part of your regular buying experience. So whether it's, automotive, liquids, for example, maybe it's at the hardware store. Instead of getting, 100 nuts in a package, maybe now you get, 75 and it's the same price. So it could be anywhere.
Wow. Okay. Now I'm very concerned. I wonder too, if this is going to continue. There's really nothing to prevent. I mean, at one point, I have to wonder, at what point will consumers notice? You can only make a package so small, right? If you're going to keep the price. If things keep going up in price, someone's got to notice this.
Yeah, and again, I think people do notice it from time to time, and it's sort of this pent-up pain, and sometimes there's this sort of relief valve where people will say, all right, well, you know what, that's it. I've had my limit of this, and I'm now going to switch to a competitor. But what will end up happening is that, these retailers will respond. So they're very good at getting as much money out of your wallet as long as they can, and they can kind of find that tipping point where you're upset enough, but not too upset that you're willing to switch to a competitor. So it's a pricing of items that we see, especially at grocery stores, is an incredible science.
Guess it doesn't make sense to complain to the grocery store, right? So that's not going to get you anywhere.
No, they're not going to do anything. If you want to complain, you have to vote with your wallet.
I will just ask one other thing. Does it apply? I was thinking as you were saying this, does it apply to fast food as well? Are we getting smaller portions there for the same price?
Probably if you look for it. I don't know any specific research, but I would not be surprised if, a medium-sized drink in the past used to be 500 milliliters, and now it's mostly ice and 300 milliliters of liquid. So I would not put that past anyone.
That should be your next project. I want to know if that's the case. I want to know if my AW Teen Burger actually contains less burger or anything else than it did before because the prices remain the same, because I guess they can only raise prices so far as well.
Maybe they'll change it to a tween burger.
Yeah, really. Just take out one of the E's. Oh, look, it's a 10 burger now. Preet Banerjee. Preet, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Take good care. You bet. You know, we're all getting fooled here, right? The consumers, until we finally notice, if we notice.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Because you don't want to miss a thing. Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
We have an approach called collective. Let's say there's a young person, 14, 15 years old, use a gun and shot some places in Montreal or put a fire some area. We're going to arrest that person. But the same team that did arrestation have a preventive team. On the site, we speak to the parents. We look at the brothers and sisters of that person. Maybe it's 8, 9, 10. Right away, we focus on that person to try to find the right help for that person not to follow the same pattern of the brother or the sister at 14, 15. And this collective approach has been working extremely well.
That is Montreal Police Chief Fady Dagher at a press conference today, kind of looking back on the year and looking ahead, of course, to 2026 as well. And he is on the line. Chief, thank you for being here this afternoon.
Hello, Mr. Rand.
I want to just ask a couple of things. First of all, with respect to what we just heard there, and you talking about how there are sadly now younger and younger people getting involved in crime. And I understand the part as well about, you know what, and I think it's a great idea to go deal with families as well. Why do you think this is happening? Can I ask? Or do you have a real reason for why you think this is happening?
Well, I'm not a sociologist, but one thing I'm learning when I'm going deeper and deeper in the discussion with the family and with the youth is the youth are going through three realities. The reality at home, the reality inside the school, and the reality in the public services outside on the streets. So they try to fit, those young kids are trying to fit in three different realities. So they have a shock of culture, the shock of values between those three realities. And they're really trying to find a way of keeping focus on what they want to do. And suddenly they meet some other people, bad people. They have bad frequentation. Then the behaviors start to be different. And slowly they slipped into the criminality. And I'm not talking anymore about 17, 18 years old. We are talking here about 13, 14, 15 years old. It's younger than before.
You know, and when I said, do you know the reasons? I mean, I'm guessing part of this, and there's not a whole lot of you can control here, part of this has to do with social media. They're much easier, of course, to find now,
yes,
I guess,
right.
for criminals, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Social media, I'm sorry, I forgot that. But you're absolutely right to be exposed to social media and to be almost 24 hours on it. It doesn't help.
I would ask, too, in relation to that clip we played, so you talk about getting involved with families because obviously you're not born into crime when you're that age, right? You're basically dragged in, if you will. What do? You have special officers who deal with this?
Yes, I keep saying that those kids, they're not born with it. They're not born criminal, and they're not criminal 24. And it's very sad, Mr. Rand, when we arrest a young kid of 13 years old. We're like, we cannot be, of course, we want to stop the crime. Of course, we are happy to arrest that young person. But in the meantime, it's a kid. It's a different ball game. It's a complete different ball game to deal with a young person who doesn't really know what he's doing. But what we are trying to focus is, okay, we have to arrest that person because there's no way we're going to tolerate that kind of crime. And as soon as we arrest the person, we have a preventive police officer on the team who had social background, are very close to, they know the spirit of the family. They try to connect with the family. They try to connect with the younger brothers and sisters. And right away, we try to intervene as a village, as a partner in the village, trying to get other partners involved, like the soccer coach, the teacher at school, maybe a grandparent, maybe an uncle, somebody who has some significance to that kid, to the younger kid, 8, 9, 10 years old, who are witness watching the brothers or the sisters getting involved in criminality and trying to change the behavior and not letting that the younger brothers getting involved eventually after in 5-6 years. And it's working well, actually.
I was going to ask, where does this come from? This come from what you were doing in Longueuil before you took over Montreal, this idea of getting close to people and just not about policing but about helping as well?
Yeah, because at one point, when you know what, for us, the police department, we're always going to be able to arrest the criminals. That's not an issue. Every time we have a crisis, every time we have gun violence, or we have stolen cars, or we have PCU fraud, we always find a way to get ahead of it and we arrest the people. But the thing is, as a society, we cannot focus only on the repressive side. We have to think about the next generation. How are we going to create the right behavior, the right choice for the kids? So this is why, since Longueuil and now in Montreal, and even before in Saint-Michel neighborhood, we keep talking to the cops, telling them, okay, now we arrest the person, what's next? Even when we arrest that person, one day or another, they're going to step outside the jail and they're going to come back to the neighborhood. Yeah. How do we welcome them back in the neighborhood? Do we still arrest them, or do we find a way to put them back on the right track? At least let's try. Because if not, we're going to keep repeating the same thing, and it's going to be costing the police department, is going to be costing to the citizen even more and more money. So let's try to find a way to prevent and to lower the crime, to slow down the crime.
I want to touch on something else you said today at the press conference, and the headline kind of says it all. So you have statistics that shows now that Montreal has become one of the safest cities in North America. Now, if that was a matter of saying, and that's the end, perfect, but it's not, because then you said there are still, and we know this, residents here have a sense of insecurity, and that's not just something they feel, that's something real on the street. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's interesting because numbers and statistics are very, very positive, but I don't like to talk about perception. I like to talk about reality and feel if people really feel insecure on the street, because when you meet or when you cross the street and when you cross someone who is disorganized mentally, who has some behavior, and even if the person doesn't even move, is just lying down on the floor, can be a homeless person or somebody else who's in a very vulnerable situation, the citizen who's walking, going to the tramway or going to the bus or going to the shopping center, seeing that kind of person in front of them, they are shocked. Not shocked because they believe they are better than them, no. But when you feel the misery, and even sometimes you can even smell the peeing around, or you can even see the person like disorganized, suddenly it's the population who feel insecure. There's not even an attack. There's not even an assault. Just to see that kind of people on the street, it's very sad, and people feel very insecure. And if by any bad chance that person start talking to you and will scream at you or attack you, then we go. People feel much more insecure.
I wonder, too, you mentioned about, the fact that you're seeing a different type of person now on the streets, perhaps, that we didn't see years ago, right? And that's, how do you deal with that? You're talking about younger people, women as well, who would not have been there before, but they're there now.
It's very interesting that you mentioned, I'm happy that you're talking about it, because usually we talk about homeless people and mental health all together. It doesn't work this way. Sometimes, yes, it is with mental health, but now what we see, younger people, younger women, homeless, and because we are seeing that the people on the street as the new profile, there are people who have a lot of issues with the finance, with the economic crisis. They have a hard time to pay the rent, and maybe 6 months, 8 months later, they're on the street. And that kind of people, we never dealt with them before. We always dealt with much more people with the health system, with the health system for the alcohol abuse, for the drug abuse, with mental health abuse. But the new clientele that we see on the street, it's very, very sad, but it's a different ballgame again.
I just wonder, too, and I know that, mental health is obviously a big part of what you're trying to do at the, the STM. I just wonder, too, or the SPVM, rather. I wonder as well, are you seeing more police coming out with that training now? Is it a specialized group of police officers? How does that work?
We are doing a lot of training. We are doing a lot of training for the recruits. But what we realize also, we are doing many scenarios with mental health. During the scenarios, we have psychiatrists, we have specialists that come evaluate our scenarios, and we can change them, adapt them following what they are giving us as a suggestion. But now we just hire almost 1,000 new police officers, which is 35 to 38% of those patrollers on the street. Mm-hmm. And we have to focus on the training now. I keep telling my team, it's good to recruit. In the recruitment, we are doing very, very well. But now how do we train him during their career? Because a police officer, when he comes in for 30 years. In 2026, our issue are the youth, the mental health, and the homeless people. Okay, fine. What's going to be in 2035? So in 10 years, how do we train that police officer again? So the continuous training, we're going to take a lot of focus on it, and I'm going to add more police officers in our center of the training, just to make sure that we're going to be able to give them the right training during the next 30 years, and they're going to be able to face the new challenges in 5, 10, 20 years.
I'm going to run out of time, but I want to ask something else that you brought up. I thought this was fascinating. You know, we all know about organized crime in the city and the fact that you've been doing a good job, with arrests, et cetera. But then you brought up something I don't think I've ever heard of someone discuss, which, as you said, is disorganized crime. What did you mean by that?
Well, when you arrest a big group of organized crime like the mafia or the bikers, what it creates on the system, it creates a disorganized criminal trying to take over, trying to take control. So we knew by hitting hard on some families and some mafia and bikers group, we knew that street gangs and other gangs are going to try to take over. But those people, they're not organized yet. So what they do disorganization criminals. So they try to take over, but they don't have the experience, and we have to deal. Like right now, sometimes we're dealing with the fire next to the business places, and it's young kids. It's young kids are getting those control and those contracts, and it's not even controlled by anybody. We don't even know who are the sponsor of those contracts. So it's really disorganized and our team of our investigators are looking at who's the next group going to take over and going to control the organized crime. And as soon as we're going to know, we're going to be able to focus on them. And in a few months, few years, we're going to arrest them also. You're right to say that on organized crime in June, we really had a big operation and mafia, in Italian mafia in Montreal. And that really destabilized the whole system of criminals in Montreal.
I just wonder, as a final question, I mentioned off the top, I didn't necessarily give you credit, but when we say Montreal is the safest city in North America, based on numbers, what does that mean exactly?
Well, you have to understand, right now in 2025, we saw the statistic, Montreal, Laval, Longueuil, the biggest area of Montreal, in the metropole of North America, including Canada and United States, we are the lowest. It's 1.16 per 100,000 people, citizens. So when you look at it in the statistic, we are the lowest, the safest city from homicide. In 45 years ago, Mr. Rand, Montreal was one of the worst metropole city in Canada in homicide crime. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying sometimes when you have a short vision, you don't see that we evolve a lot, and we cannot be sad about the past. No, the past was worse. 45 years ago, we were one of the worst cities, and now we are the best city in North America. So Montreal is very safe, but I'm very transparent. The sentiment of insecurity is still present, and I don't think it's going to go away very soon, as we have to take care of those homeless people on the street, and we have to find them housing and the services that go to those housing. So it's going to take a middle or long term, but the city of Montreal, honestly, are investing $30 million. They are opening much more refuge for the people, for the homeless people. I think we're going on the right way.
Chief, we will leave it there. Always appreciate when you provide us with some time, and congratulations on what seems like a very, very successful year. All the best in the future.
It's a pleasure. Thank you again.
Take good care. Fady Dagher, Montreal Police Chief.
This has been the Montreal Now Podcast.
Listen live on your radio weekday afternoons from 2 to 6
on CJAD 800
or through the iHeartRadio app.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years. And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.